Click that. All right. And other than that, we thank you for your participation today, for being here this evening. Our plan is to go up until 8 p.m. and no later. All right. So with starting off, I'm going to share with you all the feedback that we collected. And yes, if you would like a copy of this PowerPoint, more than happy to share this with you all later on. We sent out a survey after our first community meeting to get your input and feedback about this idea about a steering committee. It was originally proposed to develop a 7-person steering committee. Some folks shared that maybe that felt like too little, maybe that was too much. So we wanted to get everybody's input, especially for people who weren't able to attend that meeting. So I want to share with you all some of that input that we gathered, and then we can discuss it further in this group to hopefully by the end of this evening and soon before that to agree upon and finalize the size of what the steering committee would be. So some of the feedback that we received, I'm gonna go ahead and go. So the question that we asked was, what concerns do you have about the creation of a 7-member steering committee? And what proposed modifications do you have to address these concerns? So if you recall, the original idea of a 7-person member steering committee was just based on some research around best practices. What's the best number to have efficient conversations, to be able to make decisions? We wanted to propose an odd number so that when the group came together, that there would be a majority if a decision or a vote ever had to happen. So the question again was, what concerns do you have about the creation of a 7-member steering committee, and what proposed modifications do you have to address these concerns, if any? So there was a number of people, maybe 2 or 3 people, who said it's a great idea. I think we got around like 15 or 17 responses, somewhere in that number. Many people said it's not enough. We need more than 7 people. So one person said 8, one person suggested 8 people. So if one person cannot attend, there's still a majority to vote. Another person said a minimum of 10 people. One person said 11 people. Another person said a minimum of 12 people. Another person said no more than 12 people. Another person said at least 13 people, and then somebody else said perhaps 15 people. So I think the general consensus was 7 people was not a big enough group for the size of a steering committee. People had different numbers, so we want to go ahead and discuss that today. So given that this was the feedback that we received, the other suggestions that we also received today, which we'll talk about further in the future, was two or three people made the comment of suggestion of actually selecting alternates to cover in case of an emergency like illness or death of a community member. And other folks also suggested, in terms of composition, that the community should try to select people who represent a multi-generational and ethnically diverse committee that reflect the different residents of Russell City. And also wanted to make sure that the members who were nominated and voted for are serious about their commitment and the purpose of this tremendous task and challenge upon them, and really focus on the big picture. So we'll revisit some of these suggestions, especially around composition and seriousness, in terms of especially our next meeting, when we ask folks to kind of make speeches and address the group about why they should be voted. But for today, at least to start, the first objective is to have a community discussion to agree upon the desired size of a steering committee. So we're going to go ahead and go into a discussion, and we're going to go into some small groups discussions first, and then we'll come back into the larger group to report out what smaller groups share, so that by the end of it, we can agree upon a final size. But to summarize, there is a consensus that there should be somewhere between 11 to 15 members, and that alternates should also be selected in case of emergencies. It's also recommended that there's an odd number so that there can be a majority vote. So given this summary of these two parameters, around 11 to 15 people and selecting an alternate, but also to have an odd number to vote, we want to get your thoughts. So the first question, I'm going to move everybody into a breakout room, which means if we were all meeting in person, a breakout room would mean like I split you all up into groups of 2 to 3, and you have smaller conversations just to process and get your ideas out. And then you would return to the larger group to report out some of the main themes of your discussion. So it's the same idea on Zoom. I have the ability to move us into digital breakout rooms. The good thing is that you don't have to click anything at all when you move into a breakout room. Zoom just magically transitions you. And then after about 5 minutes, I'll make an announcement and then I can move us back into the large room. So when I move you into a breakout room with groups of 3 people, I want you to discuss these questions. So the first question is, in your opinion, how big should the committee be? 11, 13, or 15? So in your opinion, how big should the committee be? 11, 13, or 15? And then the second question to discuss is, does it make sense to select 2 alternates in addition to that number? Because that was an idea that many folks raised about selecting alternates. So perhaps those with the least amount of votes, when the voting goes out, can be selected as alternates. So we want to get your thoughts about these 2 questions. In your opinion, how big should the committee be? 11, 13, or 15 people? And does it make sense to select 2 alternates in addition to that number? And would that make sense to select maybe the 2 people with the lowest votes to be those alternates? Okay, so I'm going to have you discuss these 2 questions with your breakout room partners. When you get into a breakout room, you just want to make sure to introduce yourself if you don't already know one another. And then you're gonna have maybe about 2 minutes each to share. So you wanna make sure everybody in your group has a chance to share so we can get kind of a quality of voice here. And then the other thing is, yeah, I'll bring us back into the large group after about like 6 or so minutes of discussion. And when you get into your breakout rooms, if you ever have questions or you're experiencing any technical difficulties, at the bottom of those breakout rooms, there's usually a button that says ask for help. So if you click that, you can, it'll notify me and I can come in and assist you. Gloria, do you have a question? Oh, you're muted. Oh, there you go. Gloria, do you have a question? I saw your hand go up.
No, I do not.
Oh, okay. All right, everyone. So Zoom's gonna transition you into a breakout room now. You'll hear my voice while you're in breakout rooms because I'll send you a reminder. 2 minutes have gone by. Go ahead and switch to the next person to share. And then after about 6 minutes, I'll bring you all back, okay? And again, if you ever have questions in the breakout rooms, just hit the ask for help button. You'll find that at the very bottom. But I'll also circulate around the rooms to provide you with any assistance and make sure you're doing okay. In the chat box are the 2 questions we want you to discuss. All right, everybody, I'm going to go ahead and mix you all up and I will see you all in just a second. All right. Opening up the rooms and I'll see you all back here in a little bit. Hi, Marianne, are you there? Hi, Veronica. All right, everyone, breakout rooms are going to be closing now. See you all back here in the main room. Welcome back, everyone. Breakout rooms are closing in 6 seconds. All right, welcome back, community. So thank you all for sharing with your breakout rooms. So I got to pop into just a few, and it sounds like some of you got to a consensus or agreement. So what I'd like to do is go around. I'm going to have every group kind of take a moment to share out the answers that they discussed, or kind of the consensus that they came to, or the top 2 responses that they came up with. So we'll start at the top. Room 1 was Elias, Elizabeth, or Michael Johnson. Would one of you want to share out the size? What should the size be, 11, 13, or 15? And your thoughts about 2 alternates.
This is Mike Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in our group, we pretty much everybody agreed with 11,
Mm-hmm.
and with 2 alternatives, so that would be 13 total, right? With 2 alternatives, we pretty much came to that agreement.
Great.
In our group.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Mike.
You're
All
welcome.
right. So 11 members with 2 alternates, 13 total. All righty. Let's go to room 2. That was Anthony, Edward, and Nikhil, or MJ. Which one of you would like to share?
I can share. I can go by MJ. There's another Michael Johnson, so that's why MJ is easier. The other Michael, I have the story one day when we can catch up. But anyways, we decided on having 9 with 2 alternates, which makes 11.
Great. Thank you, MJ. Let's go to room 3. That was Marion, Priscilla, and Rosanna. Which one would like to share? Marion, Priscilla, or Rosanna?
I can share for the group. This is Marion.
Go ahead.
We decided on 15, 13 as the base and core, 2 as the alternates.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Marion. Let's go to room 4. That was Erlene, Regina, and Zenobia. Oh, Zenobia, you're muted. Are you speaking?
You want to speak, Auntie? So it was 11, Zenobia and my mother, Erlene, and I said 15, so we'll go with 11.
Okay.
Okay, we'll go with 11, but then wait, Zenobia said with 2 alternates, so that brings us to 13 then.
Alrighty.
Right, yeah. 11 with 2 alternates.
Got it. So 11 with 2 alternates.
Mm-hmm.
But we said the maximum was 11.
Okay.
All right, so 11 members, standing members, but 2 that would be available to step in if needed. All right. Let's go to, thank you group. Next group is room 5. That was Kathy, Gloria, and RN.
Hi, Gloria. We decided on 11 with no alternates.
Okay. What were your thoughts about that, Gloria?
We thought, we discussed between 11 with no alternates or 13 with 2 alternates, but we're going with the 11. 11 with no alternates is our recommendation.
Okay. Thank you, Gloria. And then the last group is room 6, which was James, Rebecca, and Tony.
Okay, our group just didn't come up with a specific number because of the commitment that would be required. So, with folks having a life and employment and holidays coming up, we really didn't settle on a specific number. I think Rebecca had a number 12. Help me now, Rebecca, 12, 13, something like that. And in terms of the alternates, just like in jury duty, the alternates need to appear and be aware of what's going on, so that if something were to happen to the original, then they could step in without missing a beat. And our concern was, can we find that many people?
I had suggested actually starting with an even number, like 12, because if someone is absent from a meeting, which we all know, what meeting has 100% participation, so that if someone was absent from the meeting, you still have a quorum, you still have a majority. If you have a 12-member committee and one's missing, then now you have 6 and 5, you have a majority. I think that's what they were shooting at with the odd numbers, but I think the thinking is this, that everybody would be at the meetings, so the odd number would work. And then we had some questions in our group. We weren't quite sure how the alternates would operate, how would they function? We weren't really quite sure how the alternates would function. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tony and James.
Yeah, I think so. The thought around alternates, what I was thinking based on how I was reading the information, because I did see that comment, Rebecca, about like maybe an even number. So if somebody's not there, that there would still be an odd number available. But then I think you get stuck, because of what if everybody does show up and there's 8 people, then you still would kind of be at a standstill if something were to come up. So that's where my idea was alternates came, because I think what you said, James, is a good point, that the alternates should always be there through the duration of the every single meeting, so they can step in and not miss a beat, the same way like if there's alternates in performances. And so I think the alternates would be there, and then let's say a voting member had to be absent for that evening, maybe the alternate could step in and be a part of that vote.
We also had a discussion about the consensus of a majority of the people that's on this proposed committee should have the same general feeling that we all do about what was done to us and the direction we are going. So any arguments or disagreements should be able to be hashed out in a mature adult manner.
Absolutely.
I have something to say. I think that if anybody wants to be in the core group, that you got to be sure that you have a commitment and stand up to it, because if you just say, "Oh, I'm part of a committee," but you are not serious about it, so then you're no good to the group. And instead of helping the group, you are a barrier for the group. And the other comment that I have is that Russell City was ethnically divided, kind of Latinos and whites and Black persons, and it was done to them all the same. Some people were landowners and some people were renters. However, that was their town. They lived there, they paid their rent, so they were part of it, and they had to go to a different place. So one of my takes, and I think I mentioned this before, that it should be ethnically balanced according to the population that we had in Raffles City.
Thank you, Priscilla. I'm going to address both your comment, James, and also Priscilla, and then we'll go to Michael Johnson. So I think, James, what you said is really important, that the people who are selected to be on the core group or the steering committee should represent and reflect your values, right? That's really important. And I think that's something to keep in mind, because because you all are going to be the ones who vote for these members. And in our third meeting, the meeting after this one, the people who get nominated, they'll have a chance to address the group. So today, at the end of our meeting, we'll get to discuss what would you like to hear from the people who want to be a part of the committee. We'll maybe get a chance to carve out 3 core questions. Are you serious about this work? What are your views around reparations, for instance? And we'll give them a chance to speak, and you get to be the judge. Do you think they're serious and genuine? Do they reflect your needs and values? And same thing with you, Priscilla, like if that's the view of wanting to have an ethnically diverse group, then it's up to you all to first nominate yourselves or each other and also vote for those folks. So those are 2 things to keep in mind. I'm gonna go to Michael Johnson. Oh, you're muted, Mike.
Yeah, and listen to everybody talking about whether it's 9 or 11 or 13, whatever the size. I think there should be a designation of what a quorum of that group would be. So, for example, if it was 9, then there would need to be at least 7 people who were there in order for the business of the steering committee to go forward. If it's 11, then it should be 9. If it's 13, it should be 11. There should be a significant portion of whatever the size of the steering committee, and we should designate a quorum that says, hey, if we don't have at least these many people, regardless of the size of the steering committee, we can still do business, whether or not there are some people who may end up absent and the alternates who could take their place if a quorum has not been met.
Yes.
That was just my comment.
That's a good point.
That's a great point, Michael. Thank you. So yes, I think once we establish the size of the group, then we can determine what should the quorum be out of that size for the group. So let's first agree upon the size, and then we can talk about quorum and then how the alternates will function. Let's go to one hand by Anthony.
Yeah, MJ in our group brought up having 9 people on the committee, and in our discussion we thought that the 2 alternates would take the committee level up to 11. So if it was a quorum of 9, it would still have the 11 on the committee.
Okay. I think sounds similar, but in reverse. So you're thinking 11 total, but 2 of them would be potentially alternates, but 9 would be the quorum.
No, Michael had the idea, or I'm sorry, MJ had the idea of the 9 people, and then we thought the alternates would bring the total of the committee up to 11, and using 9 as a quorum level.
Yeah, that's what I have. That's what I have as the tally down for what your group wrote down.
Thank you.
Awesome. So I was taking tallies as you all were sharing out. So it sounds like one group said 9 members as the core plus 2 alternates. And 3 groups said 11 members with 2 alternates. One group said 13 members. And then another group's, yeah. So I think it sounds like the majority is saying 11 now, and the majority is also saying 2 alternates. So it's sounding like 11 core members plus 2 alternates is what the most people are saying. How does that sound to folks?
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
As long as they're committed. That's our problem, being committed.
That's the key, right? Right, Tony? We've been through this over a year, right?
Yeah.
As long as they're committed. So at the third discussion, the third component of our discussion this evening will be what questions do we want to gather from these nominees, so that when they address the rest of this group here today in our third meeting in a couple of weeks, we'll be able to gauge them and ask them those questions. Okay. So if you all are in agreement with 11 members plus 2 alternates, if you can either give me a thumbs up in your screen, or you can use the reactions button. Awesome. Thank you. go ahead and give me a thumbs up in your screen if you have your cameras on. Great. Awesome. Thank you, Zenobia. All right, everyone, you can go ahead and, oh, the thumbs go down on their own. Okay, perfect. All right, everyone. So it sounds like 11 members it is, plus 2 alternates. We're crossing our fingers that we'll be able to get that many. I know many of you said that that's the concern, that we'll get that many, but I feel like if we don't, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Okay. All right.
Can I ask a question before you go on?
Yes, ma'am.
Are we going to be choosing from the people that volunteer to be in the group?
Mm.
Get a lot of people that want to be in the group. That's the next question. You know, how many people do we have available that want to be participate in this? Do you have an idea how much there is? How many there are? I mean,
How many people are interested?
yes.
Oh, don't know that yet, but we'll know soon. Let me go to the next slide and I'll explain that part now.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so next section that we're going to talk about is actually on that. So 11 members plus 2 alternates. Does nine people as a quorum sound good to everybody?
Yeah. Even
Michael?
the Senate has a majority, you know, to pass something, you know, yeah, that sounds good to me. 9.
Mhm.
What's a quorum?
Quorum means like if, let's say today we had to, Regina, do you want to explain quorum? You'll probably better.
Yeah, so basically it's the minimum number of people in attendance to begin or to handle the business of the committee. So most of the time it's related to a vote, right? And so if there are not a quorum available to vote, you don't have enough people to make that decision. And so if there are 11 committee members, at least 9 of them need to be present before a vote would be valid.
Okay, all right, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Mhm.
Mike Johnson, you shook your head when we say quorum. Did you have something?
Oh, no, I'm good.
Oh, you're good. You're good. Okay.
I'm good.
All right. Thumbs up for 9% for a quorum. All righty.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Okay. All right. So next portion is the nomination and voting process. So how is the next steps going to work, right? So what we're proposing is that how this will work is that now that we've established the size of the committee, which will be 11-person committee, 2 alternates with 9 as the quorum, we will send out a link that has a survey to nominate people. And you can either nominate yourself or you can nominate other people. But our idea is to put out a form or a survey so that you can actually put in names of who you want to nominate, whether that be yourself or another person. So the timeline of this is we're hoping that we can send out that form for people to nominate others or themselves and give it about maybe a week for that nomination process to happen. And then after the nomination deadline closes or ends, then whoever, all the people that get put into that like list of, hey, you are nominated, we would inform all of those people who are nominated by that following week. And then we would give them a few days to like either accept that offer or decline it. Because maybe somebody gets nominated and they're like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't have time for it. Right? Or somebody gets nominated and they weren't aware and they're like, oh, I didn't expect to be nominated, but I actually would like to be a part of this process. So they'll have the option to either accept or decline the nomination. And after they accept the nomination, then we'll let them know, okay, so now we see that we have 20 people who are nominated and they want to move forward. So we would basically tell them, okay, so our next community meeting is going to be in a couple of weeks on this October 20th. So we have 20 people, we have 2.5 hours. So maybe we're going to give maybe like 5 minutes for each candidate to speak. But what we want to do today also before we end is get an idea from you all, like what would you want to know from candidates who want to be a part of the core group or the steering committee. So that way, when they have those 5 or 7 or 3 minutes to address all of you as a community, they would know what talking points that they would need to speak to. So that's the idea.
One question.
Yes.
One question. shouldn't people know what they are expected to do first? In other words, if you're going to invite someone to be a part of something, I would suspect that there ought to be some kind of indication of
The
the
duties,
job,
the
of the
duties,
duties of the job. Something, it could be a teaser, it
job
could be
description.
ever. But I don't think just telling someone, come and tell us what you do and blah, 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 that's not going to work because people want to know something about what they're getting into. So I think that I'm going on too long, but I think that part of whatever you put out ought to have some description as to the expectation, because that then answers the question of commitment.
Absolutely. Edward, that is a great point. Yes, absolutely. People should know what the commitment is so that they can decide whether or not they want to nominate themselves or they want to accept that nomination.
I
Yeah.
understand that when you log into and register that you have the option to put that you want to serve or not, and I'm not too sure if everybody's doing that. And the people that we nominate or that should be nominated, the least they could do is to sign up with to the website and read something about Russell City. Some people might just want to be part of it, but really don't know what they're talking about. And then so it creates problems as well. So somebody needs to be informed. It's just like when you put an RPQ, you know, and know what is expected of you. I agree with Edward.
That's what he said.
But just a second, everybody. If you want to share, if you can raise your hand, because there's folks have their hand raised. So I want to make sure to call on people in order. Yeah. But thank you, Priscilla. I think definitely hearing from you and Edward that we want to put out a description of the time commitments and the expectations and the responsibilities. Let's go to Michael and then Rebecca. Mike Johnson.
Yeah. My comments were along the lines of Edward is, you know, what are the meeting commitments? You know, what's the frequency? And what time of day are the meetings going to be held, which would be part and parcel of things that people would need to know prior to making the commitment.
Great questions. So it sounds like expectations, roles and responsibilities, and what time of day. Yeah, because if people are working during the day, they might not be able to attend meetings during the day.
Right. And some of that is going to come up, you know, and be decided on by the committee, right? Because we're not going to establish when the meetings will be held. The group that is elected can decide that for themselves based on their availability of when they want to meet, how often you want to meet. We have some basic kind of expectations that we put out in the first meeting to let people understand possibly the commitment that might be 3 to 5 hours a week outside of the meetings. We can definitely share that. We'll put it on the project site and we'll also send it out in an update email after this meeting. But some of the real hard kind of facts of what day of the week, what time of the day, that will be up to the committee to determine themselves.
Thank you, Regina. Rebecca and then Gloria.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed a little bit of that. I had to take that call. It was an important one that I was expecting, but what I'd raised my hand about is I want to suggest that this group create the job description for the steering committee position. I think that's as important, if not more important, than the number of people in the committee itself, that we make sure, otherwise we don't have anything to evaluate, you know, for people to, you know, talk about what they'll do and why they think they're qualified. I think that this group should create that narrative about what we feel like would be a qualification, what would make people qualified. Absolutely. And the other thing I wanted to say, and I think we would be a good group to do that. The other thing I wanted to say is, and this may be getting ahead of the game, is that I think these timelines are too quick. And maybe there's a reason. Maybe I should start out by asking, is there a reason that these timelines are too quick? You know, the voting, you know, a week after submissions, that, you know, usually when you, like, I know that when we nominate people for, like, for my union, you have a month or two. And I know we need to be moving this process along, but that just seems to be really, really an exaggerated timing on these dates. We want to make sure that we get the word out, and it you know, takes time to do that and all, so.
So my understanding, Rebecca, are you saying the voting timeline is ambitious, or the nomination timeline is ambitious? The reason I ask is because we brought up the idea of steering committee, you know, 2 weeks ago in our first meeting. So people had a chance to, and that was the feedback. There was two. It was like, it's too slow, but we also need it to be fast. So we wanted to find a balance, like you're saying. And I think the idea is that, so the idea of a steering committee has gone out. So it's been around for at least 2 weeks now. And so by the end of next week, it'll be out there for some time. But the voting itself won't happen on this particular day. Like, people will have time to digest the information, things that they've heard, all of that. The voting link will be sent after, and we can discuss how long we want to keep the voting period open for. But yeah, between tonight and the nomination deadline, it's, I don't know, maybe about 2 weeks.
There may be people out there who are not part of tonight's meeting who are interested in being nominated, you know, or nominating themselves. There may be people out there still who don't even know about this process. I've talked to people who, you know, have some association with, you know, with Hayward and Russell City, who don't even know about this. And so
if I could just speak, we've done so much to get it out there, and we can't keep waiting for people that are not involved. We have to move this on. So, I mean, what else can we do? Like I said before, we've almost had to get a plane and write it across the sky. We have to move this on. We can't worry about people that are hee-hawing around. That's my opinion.
We talked about it last meeting, that if you wanted to be part of this process,
then get
all of us to
involved.
register at the website, you know, City of Hayward, and nominate your own self. And then also we discussed that we could put this on our own social media, you know, like Facebook, whatever social media you have. You have family that knows about it, you have friends, and if you put it on, I put it on social media myself. But we could all do that, you know, we could help the process. And like Tony says, you know, we've been at this for different purpose, but we need to move on. We need to participate and be active, trying to nominate or trying to get people to come and be part of this process, and not just be a recipient of whatever we figure out, you know, or midterm. And we also had a deadline. Up to this point, you can no longer join the group on our previous task that we had.
Well, you can always join the group, but you have to follow suit on what's already been decided.
Thank you, Priscilla. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Rebecca. Did you have more to add? Okay, let's go to Gloria.
That was it.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. Let's go to Gloria next, and then Marion.
Right, maybe along the lines of Rebecca talking about a job description, I think we should have some minimum qualifications from candidates. One of the minimum qualifications is that steering committee members should have some sort of affiliation with Russell City. They should be residents, descendants. It shouldn't just be anyone from the city of Hayward, but they must have some affiliation with Russell City. And then my other question was, how many people can one person nominate?
Thank you, Gloria. Definitely on your question about some qualifications, that's going to be our next discussion topic, which is what do we want to ask in terms of people's qualifications? But I think that will definitely be one of them. You know, what's your connection or relationship to Russell City?
Right.
So we'll want people to speak on that. Regina, do you want to speak on that question about how many people can each person nominate?
Sure, 11. And so now that we've made a decision that the core group size will be 11, everybody can nominate 11 people, and the highest vote getters will be the ones that make it onto the committee, and the next highest 2 will be the alternates. How does that sound?
Okay.
Thank you, Gloria.
Regina, are you saying that nominations are in fact votes?
No, I am saying nominations are nominations. So you can nominate up to 11. Other people are going to nominate another up to 11. And then those individuals that are nominated, they're going to come to a meeting and talk about what you're going to talk about next, what you want them to say to you. And then you all are going to vote for the folks. Maybe you vote for somebody that you didn't even nominate yourself because you heard them speak at the meeting and you like what they had to say.
Thank you, Regina. Thank you, Gloria. Let's go to Marion and then MJ.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Yes.
So my question, I agree with Tony, with Gloria, in terms of, we've been out here canvassing and trying to let everyone know we need to keep this moving. We can't keep waiting, because even those people that we've reached out to and initially contacted, they're still not here. So we've done our job. The other thing that I wanted to know, which Gloria, you covered, thank you so much, and Michael. So in terms of the nominations, everyone that's nominated will hit that initial list. Is that correct?
Say, what do you mean by initial list? Everyone.
I mean, everyone that's nominated will be there for us to review, and everyone that's nominated will get a chance to be voted on, right?
Unless they decline the nomination.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Marion. MJ and then Edward.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I agree that this needs to keep moving. The elders, I've heard from my mom and from her friends and her circle of friends and the descendants of Russell City that the word's been out. And we can set time deadlines, and if things don't happen, then we can reschedule things. But if we don't keep this moving, it's not going to go anywhere. So I agree that, and I agree with the timeline that you put out there. I think that they're sufficient, and I think we should move on it in that manner. And also, I think one of the requirements should be, if you're going to be on the steering committee, that you have to have some connection, descendant, relative that was part of Russell City. That should be, that's a no-brainer. That's a no-brainer that, because this is about the descendants of Russell City. It's about the community, and it's about healing too. And the bigger community should hear it and be a part of it. But ultimately, the descendants have suffered, and their stories need to get out. And this is about their healing process.
Thank you, MJ. Yeah, it looks like everybody's in agreement that the requirement is everybody on the steering committee should be
No, I don't.
Oh, go ahead, Edward.
I don't agree that everyone should be from Russell City. I think that the majority of representation ought to be from Russell City. And the reason I say that is because this is going to get political. And as it gets political, we have to have tentacles out there who have some influence with the political structure, no matter what that is. But I think that we need to have voices beyond Russell City who can bring the community together to articulate the importance of why the city needs to make good on its promise so that we're not perceived as just a group of people who were disenfranchised, negatively impacted, and we want our share. I think if you're going to deal with trying to get the human, no, if you're going to deal with trying to get the community behind you, then you're going to have to give them a taste of what you're trying to achieve. The majority, absolutely.
Thank you, Edward. So it sounds like what you're saying is the reason why you disagree that not everyone should have to be a part of Russell City or connected to a descendant or relative is that you might need somebody who has expertise or areas beyond just being a part of the community, that you might need somebody to kind of represent your voice and be political or play a political game in some way. And I think, I mean, a few of my thoughts to that too is, you know, as a steering committee, you could tap in and get expertise outside of the steering committee too. Like you can maybe have, you know, subcommittees or people to represent you or get consultancy or use some maybe, yeah, other types of resources. But perhaps instead of making it a requirement, maybe that's a question that is posed to all of the different nominees who want to move forward. You know, what's your connection? And then it'd be up to all of you to vote whether you decide to select people who are direct relatives to descendants or not.
And are they different? And or if they're part of Hayward. We don't need anyone coming from the outside who's not part of the Hayward community.
Well, I don't agree. I'm sorry. I think everybody that should be on this committee should be a descendant of Russell City. We don't need no one from the outside. We already have our hands or tentacles, as you refer to, with the city giving us that apology. That's enough. Now we need to have people that are actually from Russell City. We don't need no outsiders in there because they don't feel the same pain that we feel.
Thank you, Tony.
I agree with Tony.
Edward, I think your mic might be covered. Can't hear me. Edward, did you have more to add?
No. I have. That's the opinion that I have. I agree with the speaker in terms of we have the commitment from the city of Hayward. That's true. How long will it last? We don't know. I just think when you do these kinds of things, you need to have that political clout some kind of way.
How more political can you get?
I think.
All right, everybody, just one person at a time, please. And we're not talking about timeline and nomination, but we're going to move on to qualifications next. So first, timeline and process. How is this looking for people? Go ahead, Edward, and then we'll go to James.
No. One thing I was going to say to close out from what Gloria was saying is that I think if we establish also an elder committee, we talked about that in our group. If we establish an elder committee of advisory members from Russell City who can continue to inform us and continue to guide us, I think that's another way you get at what Gloria might be talking about.
Sure. Thank you, Edward.
Can the city provide an attorney to guide somebody? That would be helpmate to the core group, you know, what we can do, we can't do. I mean, that's something that we could ask the city to see if they would provide some legal help or guidance. And I know there might be conflict of interest, but you know, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are descendants of Russell City that have some kind of knowledge in the legal area, you know, or what we can ask for or cannot ask for, you know, and then all we could do is ask and say, no, you can't do that or whatever. And then there's a dialogue after that. Right. But I think that people that should be in the core group should be people related to Russell City because they went through this pain and they're the ones that are interested. They're the ones that are going to have that commitment to get something for the rest of the people, you know, and somebody that is just somebody that you hire or somebody that is political, you know, make a name for themselves. No, I think it should be somebody that is directly related to being a descendant or ex,
Thank you for,
ex-resident of Russell City, because there's still some of these people around, you know.
yeah, thank you for.
So, I think you should, the courage, the decisiveness, and the eagerness to get something done, and that's what we need. We need some blood in there.
Thank you, Priscilla. I appreciate that. And again, if you would like to share, make sure to raise your hand or let me know in the chat so that I can call on you, because I know folks are waiting, so it can feel, you know, dismissive if you chime in and things like that. So we'll just try to respect the talking piece.
You push control, and what other key to raise your hand?
Oh, Priscilla, yes, just click reactions at the bottom, and then there's a bar that says raise hand. Do you see that?
Reaction. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, I apologize.
All right. Okay, so again, we're just want to refocus the group. First, we're talking about timeline. Does this look good for everybody in terms of the process? And then we'll get to this next question around the discussion of, sorry, where's the discussion? I'll get to the discussion around candidate qualifications. What do we want to know about potential candidates? So that's where we're going next. But in terms of timeline and nomination process, does this look good to everybody? Can we move forward with this?
Yeah,
So,
it looks good to me.
thank you, Tony. We'll go to Gloria, MJ, and then.
I agree with that.
Thank you.
Well, are we to the next question on qualifications, I guess is what I'm.
Oh, okay.
Speaking.
Let me just hold your thought then, Gloria. MJ, do you have a thought about the timeline, or is it qualifications as well?
The same, you know, the timeline's fine. I've already said that. We can go on the qualifications. Yeah.
All right. Is everyone good with this timeline here? Thumbs up. All right, I see a majority. Thank you, everybody. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the next question. Our last discussion here. Candidate qualifications. So what do you want to know about potential candidates? So what do you want to know about potential steering committee candidates? For example, do you have time to commit? What's your connection to Russell City? What's your interest in being on the committee? What else would you want to know from these folks? So let's go to Gloria, and then we'll go to Tony and, sorry, Gloria, Arlene, and then Tony.
Okay, again, for minimum qualifications, I disagree with Edward, and I think many of us from Russell City, I could name probably most of the people on the call, are politically savvy. We do have political connections. We can open doors. I mean, just because we're from Russell City doesn't mean that we're not politically connected.
Right.
So I think that someone, anyone who's going to serve on this steering committee and represent Russell City residents or descendants, they should be one of them. You know, like I lived through all the pain and suffering. It's very different from something that you're read in a newspaper article to actually have been there and done that. I don't think that it should be someone who lived in Hayward. I think one of the minimum qualifications is that you must have a connection to Russell City and preferably a resident and or descendant.
I agree.
I agree.
Gloria, let's go to Arlene and then Tony.
Oh, me?
Oh, no, Arlene, not Edward, sorry. Arlene.
Yes, I was just wondering, you said what's your connection to Russell City? What's your interest in being on the committee? Wouldn't living in that atmosphere of Russell City and all the people you went to school with, the high school, if your grandparents lived there, if you, you know, with the kid, if your grandparents lived there and you came there to visit quite often, that would be a qualification too.
Yes.
Thank you, Arlene.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was a resident, but it doesn't make a difference. I have friends who came from different other states to visit their grandparents all summer. They know what went on.
Mhm.
I played with them, so don't exclude them.
Mhm. Thank you, Arlene. That's why I would recommend having this question as an open-ended question, like what's your connection, so that people could really explain, like if they went to go visit relatives or things like that, so that you all can decide for yourselves, does that qualify them enough for you to vote for them if it meets your qualifications? Oh, you're muted again, Arlene.
Grandparents live there. They the grandparents' descendants. They know about it because the grandparents spoke about it often. Like my children, all my grandkids was at the picnic just about. I think it was like about 15 of us there. You know, I talked to them, each and every one of them. My daughter's on the call every week with me. She knows what happened in Russell City. So I don't want you to exclude if a child came to visit the grandparent every summer or for the holidays to be excluded. They have voices too. No, well, she said she didn't want nobody if they didn't really want to live there. Yeah, well, they have to do that. I don't want to be on it if they don't. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Arlene. So it sounds like what you're saying is that grandchildren, for instance, shouldn't be disqualified just because they didn't live there, because even if they lived further away, they could go visit you or the residents there and still be really closely connected to the story and the experience. Let's go to Tony and then we'll go to Mike Johnson.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with my cousin Gloria. It's not like we just got this started. We've been doing this a long time. So we are aware of how to get to the politicians and the different avenues that we need to go. So, and I also agree with Arlene that whoever is nominated should be able to explain why and how what was done in 1963 has affected their family.
Okay.
That's all for me.
Why? Can you say that again, Tony? Why and how?
Who's ever nominated should be able to say what happened, why it happened, and how it affected their family.
Great. What happened, why it happened, and how did it affect your family? That's what you want to hear from them. Okay.
Right. Because a lot of it wasn't something that you could see. It was in their spirit. They were made to become renters when they were owners. And thank you, Marian, for saying that. That really opened up my eyes. How is making someone go to renting property, never owning property, when they owned property and they were chased out? So I think, you know, they should, who's ever on the committee should be able to portray that pain as well.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you. Let's go to Mike Johnson and then Kathy Rodriguez.
Yeah, it's really difficult when there are three Michael Johnsons on the
Sure.
call. And the other Michael Johnson, I go by MJ as well, so that makes it even tougher. So you can just call me MBJ, the most valuable one.
That's why I put Mikael to differentiate. I saw that earlier on. That makes it easier, man. So
Yeah, absolutely. So here's my opinion. My opinion is I don't think that it should be limited to just Russell City residents. I do think that there should be a preference for Russell City residents and Russell City descendants. I also think that there are people who didn't live in Russell City, but frequented Russell City, who may have owned land in Russell City and didn't live in Russell City. So to say that the only qualifier is that you have to be a resident of Russell City is rate limiting. It is absolutely rate limiting in terms of getting meaningful perspective to bring to the table. So I agree with Earlene Thomas. I agree that you don't necessarily have to be a resident per se in order to bring meaningful perspective to what went on and how you were impacted by what happened in Russell City. So that's just my point. The other thing that I would say is, and I've seen the people on this, on the call, some of the people here, I see people on this call who are board members of companies, who are directors in other companies. I see people here who are on planning commissions or other commissions in other cities. So I don't want people to think that somehow the people who are involved in this don't have the political savvy to be able to navigate or bring meaningful value. From people I see on this call alone, that expertise is already sitting here on this call right now. So I wouldn't worry about, do we have people who have expertise or who can be politically savvy?
But maybe that's a question to add, right, MVJ? Meaningful, what meaningful value or expertise can you bring to the committee?
That sounds good.
All right, thanks, Mike Johnson. Let's go to Kathy and then Mikhail.
Hi, I'm Kathy Rodriguez. I think who should be on the committee is those who've been impacted and their descendants. Because I know my great-grandparents owned property and they had a farm in Russell City. And then my grandparents lived there. I lived there because my grandparents raised me and they had to sell it. They had no choice. And then they had to become renters. And I know as a young person, I was really impacted by it because the property was so big that we had all our family reunions there. And I think if grandchildren are involved and they were a part of that, they should be able to, like one of the ladies were saying, like, don't leave the grandkids out of, making the decisions for this committee or whatever. But what I don't know is what is the goal and objective of why this committee is being formed in the first place, because I didn't come to the first meeting, but I know I'm interested because I was a part of it and I know what it did to my family. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Kathy. I think Regina, but I think to kind of summarize what you said, it sounds like you're in alignment with what Earlene Thomas shared earlier about like grandchildren should not be excluded because they were impacted in part of that story as well. I see that Regina had pasted some of the description of the expectations and what the committee would do, but essentially this committee would be kind of a reflection of the larger Russell City voice and needs to be able to quantify or qualify in some way what reparations would look like. For some people, it might be money. For some people, it might be something more symbolic in the city. For other people, it might be something more memorialized. And so this steering committee would be kind of be in touch with the larger community to be able to capture what are those things so that this could be part of the reparative justice process. Thank you, Kathy. Mikhail and then Rebecca.
Yeah, so I agree with Earlene, Tony, Gloria, Priscilla, all the folks, the elders who have said, I'm a direct descendant. My mom lived there, my grandparents lived there, so I'm, in one sense, I'm a grandchild, and then my mom lived there, so you got, to be on the committee, let the folks who've gone through the pain, okay, let them steer this committee. They can guide you, they can tell you the stories. I'm not opposed to anyone else being a part of the process, okay? As an advisory, in an advisory role, no problem. You can be an ally in that way, but, show some humility to the folks who've gone through the pain, who've went through all this agony and who are still going through it. And so if you really believe in this process, be part of it. And you can be an advisor to the process. So I just want to add that, to what everybody else is saying.
Thank you, MJ. Yes, so really thinking about honoring the elders and their voices and allowing them to steer the committee, and as descendants, direct descendants, to be able to help guide the process with their advisement, and their needs coming out of their suffering and experiences. We'll go to Rebecca, Erlene, and then Edward, and then Priscilla. Rebecca.
So I think you answered one of my questions was the same as the other woman, which was, what do you want as an outcome of this process? What specifically is the desired or designated outcome of the steering committee? I'm still not quite sure, and I do apologize. I missed the first meeting as well, but I'm not getting a sense of exactly what is the goal. If you could, state it briefly of this committee. What is their work? What is their charge?
I can step in here a little bit, and I've dropped the link to the recording from the last meeting in the chat. It's also posted on the project website if anybody wants to go back and take a look at that. But the charge is stemming from the apology made by the City Council to the former residents and descendants of Russell City. A charge was also made to the city staff to work with said residents and descendants on figuring out what restitution would look like. And so the idea is to have the city provide a space and opportunity for those who have been impacted to work together to come to some consensus around recommendations that you would like to make to City Council related to restitution, right? And part of our charge now in this particular phase, working with Circle Up, is to make sure that you all have an established governance process. So the establishment of the steering committee, and then once the steering committee is established, you'll work with Circle Up on a couple of more meetings to determine what do communications look like and what is the decision-making process. Once you all have that, or the steering committee has that understanding and done, the next step would be for the steering committee to choose its own facilitator to take the project forward. This facilitator would be someone that would help you to understand the different forms that restitution and reparations can take, and to get an understanding from our legal office about what is and what isn't legal for the city to do. And to help you, that facilitator would also help you to process the wealth of research that is going to be coming in from our researchers that we've hired to do some of this work over an 8-month period, so that you all can synthesize all of that information and not waiting 8 months, but to come up with some short-term, near-term, and long-term goals. Those longer-term goals probably being based on the completeness of the research. And so that is the charge of the group.
Thank you.
Thank you, Georgina.
You answered my second question, Regina, because that was, how would this committee work with the research committee and the other resource groups? And I'm also wondering, of course, this is an entirely voluntary commitment, and there's no budget for needing to for any transportation or any needing to go out and accumulate information. The information will already be at our disposal based on what the research group learns. Is that true?
Correct. So the city is providing the researchers, and the city will also pay for the facilitator of your choosing to help you carry the project work forward. So there is budget for that. And as part of your early convenings, if you feel like, okay, we need a mailing budget because we want to be able to, part of our communication strategy is to send out mailers to people that are part of the picnic list that you have access to so that you can get more voices into the process. That wouldn't necessarily be unheard of, right? And so I would want you all to once you have your steering committee, to kind of think about how you need to operate to continue this work forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Let's go to Erlene next, and then Edward.
I would just like to ask the
Marion,
question. I would just like to ask the few, statements. Do you realize it's been 60-something years that this has been going on? You mean to tell me and the other recipients that lived in Russell City, played in Russell City, had grandparents there, they're the descendants, that you don't have no kind of documentation on what went on, that we have to go through all of this over again? And you know, with deep in your heart, what happened out there. I didn't calm myself down a whole lot. I used to cry. I don't do that any longer. I'm just speaking to the whole shebang, whoever's in it, whoever you take your message to, this young lady here, and kid me not, I have nothing against anyone. I just want you to know, to get it right. We can't keep on going through this. It's about, I'm gonna say this, maybe about 40 people that's over 80 now that lived in Russell City. That's all I have to say. So how long is it gonna go on? I'm fine.
Thank you, Arlene. Yeah. I'm not sure I have a response to your statement, but I definitely hear the pain and the frustration that you're expressing. Like, do we really have to hash out all of the research and all these things to really get to know and understand like what really happened? Because people know. And I think that's a topic of the conversation that happened in our last meeting. And I think we're going to leave it up to the committee as well to really determine that. You can use the research or not, but there's going to already be a wealth of knowledge and experience and pain and suffering already within the steering committee and the group of people that is put together. Thank you, Arlene. Let's go to Edward and then Priscilla. And again, we're on this question around candidate qualifications. What do you want to know about potential steering committee candidates? So far what I have in my notes is, do you have time to commit? What's your connection to Russell City? What happened? Why did it happen? And how did it affect your family? And what meaningful value or expertise can you bring to the committee? So these are some of the questions that you all want to know from potential candidates who want to represent you on the steering committee. Let's go to, so what other questions do you want to know or things you want to know from these potential candidates? Well, go ahead, Edward.
I would want to know, as a member of the committee, what do they want to achieve? Why, besides all of the connections and identity, what do you want to achieve? At the end of the day, what will give you satisfaction that would allow you to spend this amount of time on this committee? Bottom line, what is your purpose for being here? Beyond all the things that have been said, my grandmother was here, my granddaddy was here, blah, 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 blah. But what is it that you want to see happen? And what are you willing to do to help us to get there? Because it's one thing to have feelings, it's one thing to have history, but it's another thing to have results from the city. I think I heard it earlier. How long are we going to be dealing with this? We need to get measurable, tangible results. So the people who come to this committee need to be very clear that that is what we're looking for, because it's a lot of money being spent already. There's a lot of money being spent. For example, I, for one, would like to see the city's budget for this project. But telling me that we're going to have a lawyer, telling me we're going to be able to get somebody to do some mailing, telling me we're going to be able to get somebody to do some research. I don't know. And I'm a college president, okay? And I don't know what that means. So I think that the committee deserves to see the budget so to understand budget drives commitment. So what is the budget for this program?
At present, $150,000 has been set aside. We also received an additional $20,000 from Russell City Energy as a gesture of goodwill following the explosion and the fact that they used the Russell City name. Those monies have been put into a capital project fund for our use here. I think our city manager maybe spoke to some of you individually to talk about the ability for us to go forward at mid-year to request additional funding. But for right now, what I say, 150,000 plus 20,000, so 170,000 is covering the cost of the current facilitation with monies set aside for the facilitator of your choice. The lawyer works for the city. He is a representative of the city attorney's office, and he will be providing some capacity building around some of the things in the research that he's done about what is legal for a city to do under these particular circumstances.
Thank you very much, Ms. Youngblood. Question, do Ms. Shelter, I'm sorry, Ms. Youngblood, thank you very much. Question, do members of the committee have the budget? And does the budget outline exactly where the expenditures are going to be?
No, and so the committee, we don't have a committee yet. And so I think that is something that the committee can work on when the committee is formed. So one of the first charges of the committee will be identifying their own facilitator. You can decide how much money out of that you want to spend on facilitation, right?
Yeah, but the problem with that, and I don't want to belabor the point, but the problem with that is saying to a committee that you can now decide who your facilitators are going to be. The question is to facilitate what? What's the goal? What is the mission? What are the objectives? What are the measurable objectives?
And those are great questions.
That goes into that.
Absolutely. And those are all things that we will want to discuss with the committee once it's formed. And so I think the charge for today is to, one, identify the size of the committee, which we have, to be comfortable with the timeline for nominations, which we have. And then we're rounding third and headed home with trying to determine what we want to know about the candidates or individuals who are nominated. Once we have a committee, I think it is fair and right to engage in all of those conversations to determine how the committee is going to govern itself and lay out the work.
One last question, I'll shut my mouth. Oh, why are you saying that, Miss Tony? I see you laughing up there in the corner. Here's the question. Will this committee that has been working to help us to get to where you want, will this committee have access to that information?
Sure.
Okay, as a citizen of 40 some years, I certainly would want to see the data relative to the budget expenditures, because I just cannot help but believe that some of my tax dollars are going in there. So I would, one, call for this group right here to have a clear understanding of what that budget is before it gets allocated, or if it's currently allocated, because I think that will inform the kind of question that this committee could ask. If they know the money, not going to be quiet.
Thank you, Edward. All right, everybody. So just to recap before we go to Priscilla, where we're at right now is As Regina mentioned, we're rounding the corner. These are the questions that you want to know about candidates. Do you have time to commit? What's your connection to Russell City? What happened, why it happened, and how did it affect your family? What meaningful value or expertise can you bring to the committee? And this one, which was recently provided by Edward, what is your purpose for being here? As a member of the committee, what do you want to achieve? And at the end of the day, what would you want to see happen? And what are you willing to do to get us there?
Perfect.
So let's go to Edward. Thank you, Edward. Let's go to Priscilla and then Marion. Go ahead, Priscilla.
Oh, okay. I was waiting for Edward. Okay. Regarding what Tony was saying about only residents of Russell City should be in the committee. And I think we had a dialogue after that. And I just want to remind everybody, I'm 80 years old and I was 19 when they shut down the, Russell City. A lot of the people that lived in Russell City, they were poor, they had no college education, whatever. That doesn't mean you're not smart. It's just not education. But the other side of it is that descendants of people that lived in Russell City, they have had the opportunity to go to college, have good jobs and be savvy on the different things, okay? And so I think descendants of Russell City or, people that are really close to the Russell City core group that live there, I think they should be allowed to be in the core group as well. And also, I just wanted to remind you all, and on our first meeting, it was suggested we talked about the fact that you should tell your friends, your family, whatever, they need to register on that website for the city so that you could get the information, because it's hard to reach a lot of people. But if you register or your family or whatever, you want to be part of this or benefit from this process, you need to be registered to the website for Russell City. And I think that's about it.
Thank you, Priscilla. Thank you for sharing those thoughts. Let's go to Rebecca and then Arlene. Oh, you're muted, Rebecca. Can't hear you yet.
Your mic's not on.
Can you hear me?
Rebecca.
Can you hear me now?
Now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so question number one, just specifically getting to the candidate questions. If you have time to commit, that's not specific enough. It needs to say something like, it needs to have a preface or something like, we're anticipating that this could require, I'm just gonna throw a number out there, 10 hours of your week or something, or 5 hours approximately of your week, or 3 to 4 hours a week, or 20 hours a month, or 10 hours. And do you have time? To just say, do you have time? Well, people may not know. There may be people interested who are not part of this group today. So you don't know what that means. It's too generic. Yeah, I have time. Well, then when you get involved and then the person says, well, I had no idea it was going to be this much time. I think it needs to be qualified.
Great.
We're looking for X number of hours approximately, or could be. Do you have that kind of a time? So that's that one. Question number 3, what happened, why it happened, how did it affect your family? Do you mean are you trying to say what happened in your experience, or as far as the association that you have? I just think it needs to be clarified a little bit. I think that question needs to be a little bit better defined.
Tweaked. Yeah, we'll just capturing some thoughts from this evening, but it'll.
Okay. Well, okay. Well, I was just going by what was there, and then number 4, I would add skills and experience. What meaningful value, skills and experience. I guess expertise might cover it. can you bring to the committee? So those are some of the tweaks, I guess,
Great.
that I have for the questions.
So what meaningful value, skills, or experience can you bring to the committee?
That would be my suggestion. Yes.
All right, thank you, Rebecca. Let's go to Erlene and then Michael Johnson.
You're welcome.
I don't have to answer that now. I don't understand that. I'm saying something else.
Just give us a moment, please. Go to Michael, all right? Thank
Okay,
you.
no problem. Michael?
Yeah, so you have questions about, commitment, connection. How did it affect your family? Values that you bring to the table, your purpose for being here. My question is how many questions do we think we need to have? And are there some kind of criteria that says if you don't have any of these that have been identified, that somehow disqualifies you? Or is this just, we're just asking because it would be good to know?
That's a great question. My answer to that would be, this is your collective criteria. So, because even though the city is putting out the form for people to nominate themselves or other people, we're not necessarily like putting requirements. Like, it sounds like this would be your criteria. So this is what you would want to know from candidates, but this would be what you're using to almost like judge them or rate them while they're speaking to you all on the 20th. So you're going to be listening for these things to inform your voting decisions. Regina?
Yeah, and I think we would definitely inform the candidates that these are the things that you'd be listening for. Depending on how many people are going to be participating in this process is going to kind of determine the amount of time that they're going to each be given to speak. So we're going to make sure that they're prepared in advance with these questions or some variation of them, and they'll be given X amount of minutes to convey that message to you. And then you certainly can possibly ask them some questions within a timed parameter so that everybody gets a chance to speak, listen, and be heard.
Thank you, Regina. Let's go back to Erlene if you're ready, and then Gloria.
Question, you're saying, what would you want to see happen? And what are you willing to do to get us there? I would like to see basically for Hayward to go over some of the notes and all the people that they sent out there to question the people that actually lived out there, that they didn't ask us what we wanted to do with the city. And when we did, they didn't agree. So I would like to see the time that they started thinking about dismantling Russell City. How long did it take them after everything was cleared out of Russell City? How long did it take them to get all those beautiful buildings up that nobody's in? That's my question. And my answer too.
Thank you, Erlene. It sounds like that's captures some of the things that you would want to know from the city. Thank you. And let's go to Gloria and then Rebecca. Can you unmute for us, Gloria?
Can't hear you, Gloria.
Sorry. Okay, sorry about that. Maybe this question is answered someplace, but I'm wondering if there could be a question on who are you, or your background, your qualifications. It might be part of number 4, or it's probably embedded in some of these other questions, but who are you? Or your background and qualifications, just you as a person.
Yeah, it sounds like a general question, but I think there's components of it that's probably embedded into like your connection to Russell City, but also the skills that people bring.
But that doesn't tell me who you are. Like, I'm Gloria Moore, I'm retired. What is my work history? What is my background? Who am I to represent you? What are my qualifications? I don't question specifically addressed. It's like, any interview, you first start by telling who you are, what was your life experience, where somebody was talking about somebody being politically savvy. I mean, who are you? I would like their background.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is, who are you? Tell us about your background and your qualifications.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one other point I just wanted to clarify, there was a lot of discussion earlier when I said descendants. In my mind, grandchildren are descendants. I mean, anyone. So there was a lot of, it sounded like I was excluding grandchildren, but they are, in my opinion, descendants.
Thank you for clarifying that, Gloria. And let's go to Rebecca.
Yeah, I want to see something we have, and somebody pointed out the sort of the balance of the questions, your time frame and your perspective about what happened, and your how it impacted you, what you want to see come out of this. And I think that there might be a question about so this is a committee that's going to need to work together. So just like somebody pointed out in a job interview, when you interview for a job, that organization wants to know how well you can get along with each other, how you can foster the group culture, what type of a team work or team member you are, what kinds of sort of people skills you can bring to the process. So I would like to see a question in there that addresses and it can be worded however, but what experience, if any, do you have in a community process such as this? Something like that, or do you, what kinds of, talk about your team building skills. There's going to be a super need for this group to be cohesive so we can get the work done. So we can get the work done.
Yeah.
So just so experience is good, and as far as having gone through the experience, not good, but all that is really important, and the political side and and all that is really important, but also sort of like how well can you commit to this process as a team member, following our the processes that we set up, collaborating and communicating and all that stuff.
So
if
yeah,
that makes any sense.
it makes complete sense. I think that adds on to kind of Gloria's question about like, who are you? What's your background or qualifications, and what experience do you bring in working in a community or team process or environment?
Yeah.
Hold on a second. Let's see. Thank you, Rebecca. I saw somebody's hand just went up. Who was that?
You could add or clarify number 4 and add to that, kind of part of it.
Yes, absolutely. All right, thank you, Rebecca. And we can definitely update number 4. What meaningful value or expertise can you bring to the committee? Tell us about your experience working in a team or a community-based
process. Yep.
Okay.
That's pretty important.
Okay, I'm just doing some wordsmithing here. All right, any other thoughts about these questions? Let me go ahead and update them really quick. I'm gonna paste them here. All right, so the 6 questions that we have so far, and then I'll go to Edward. Who are you? Tell us about your background and your qualifications. Regarding time commitment, we're anticipating that this could require blank number of hours per week or month. Do you have time to commit to this? What's your connection to Russell City? Oh, I had wordsmith this question somewhere else. But to your perspective, tell us about what happened, why it happened, and how what happened in Russell City affected your family. There's going to be some wordsmithing to Tony's question here. What meaningful value or expertise can you bring to the committee? Tell us about your experience working in a team or on a community-based process. And what is your purpose, ultimate purpose for being here? So as a committee, as a member of the committee, what do you want to achieve at the end of the day? What would you want to see happen? And what are you willing to do to get us there? Let's go to Edward.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I think that the number of questions that you have there will generate enough content for members who are screening this committee to get the depth and breadth of that particular candidate. And I think it's enough where some people who are interviewing can have some time to look, listen, jot things down. But I think that's, in my opinion, my humble opinion, the questions that you have there is enough to get what the committee might be looking for relative to answers. Because after you get those answers, you're going to have to sit around, talk about them, and that will take a lot of time. So you want to make this as concise as possible.
Yeah, yes, we will absolutely do that. Yeah, my thoughts are, we'll kind of wordsmith these questions a little bit, make them more concise.
Yes.
For those who get nominated and want to move forward with their nomination, I think we'll be asking them to speak to these questions in our next community meeting, but we can also ask people to write out these responses too. So after our next community meeting, you all can actually review their responses as well to inform your voting decisions. All right, everyone. Is there anything else that you would want to know about candidates, or does this just about summarize it? All right, we get thumbs up, more thumbs up. Thank you. Thank you, Gloria. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Kathy. Oh, thank you. All right, everyone. Kathy, do you have a question, or were you just giving me a thumbs up? You have a question? Go ahead.
It also would be good to know, like, if they were also involved, you know, somebody mentioned it already, like how many years they were involved in either quality assurance or a steering committee. So that way we could get an idea of how much experience they have.
Yeah, I think that might be covered here. Tell us about your experience working in a team or on a community-based process. And we can put in parentheses, you know, like how many number of years or for how long. Rebecca?
Yes. How will this, and again, forgive me if I should already know this, I did miss the first meeting. How will these questions be disseminated? How will people, like this group? Yeah.
I'm gonna pass it to Regina.
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I intend to do is to send a follow-up email to everyone who signed up on the website that basically provides a link to this meeting recording. I'm sorry, I'm getting sleepy. A link to this meeting recording, kind of a recap of this nominations process with a link to begin nominations on the 3rd, excuse me, and I can include these questions. Now, the link that you will use to nominate up to 11 people, we're going to ask you to tell us not just the name of the person, but some contact information, ideally an email address for the person so that we can reach out to them to confirm that they accept the nomination. And if they accept the nomination, we will also submit to them the questions and maybe submit that all at the same time. You've been nominated. Here are the expectations of somebody to be part of the steering committee. Here's the time commitment, and here's what people are going to want to know from you when you come to the meeting to be considered. And they can let us know at that time, yes or no, I want to move forward in the process. How does that sound to everybody?
Do they have to be
Great.
local? Can
I
they,
like it.
can they be outside of the area? Like
I
live in
think-
their state or someplace else?
I think so. I mean, you know, again, it's up to you to all decide who you want to nominate and ultimately vote for. But I think that there probably could be people that, you know, have a very strong connection to Russell City that may live outside the state, but it'll be up to you to decide if you want them on the steering committee. Because that could, you know, create a little more complication if you're going to have ever in-person meetings. You might have to then create a situation where there's a hybrid, or you may want to keep it all virtual. I don't know, but that'll be up to you.
Wonderful.
Could you put all that information on the website? That way, if
Yes.
anybody's interested that are not informed already, you know, they could submit somebody or submit themselves to be nominated. And that's
Yes.
why I keep on emphasizing the fact that it's very important that we tell our loved ones or friends to be able to register to the website. That's our link. That's our main link. And I cannot enforce it enough.
Yes, I was actually, when I was turned this way, I was already communicating with our web team to try to get this information out there now that we know exactly how many people will make up the steering committee. So hopefully I'll be in a workshop for the first part of the morning, but hopefully I can work with our web team to get that up tomorrow, or maybe it would have to be on Monday.
Quick question.
Mhm.
It's a technical question. How do you, I saw you put some things on the chat, Regina. How, when this meeting is over, how do I access that?
Yeah, so unfortunately, once the meeting is ended, you won't have access to the chat.
Oh,
But I will be sending that same information out in the follow-up email.
okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much, everyone. Are there any more questions before we wrap up for this evening?
I think it was a great meeting.
Agree. It's
Give
very-
ourselves a clap.
I definitely agree. Thank you all so much for your time this evening. I know it's a lot to sit through, and we really appreciate all your voices and sharing your input and yes, so thank you for all that collaboration. All this information is going to be sent out tomorrow or by Monday, so please be on the lookout for that, and please forward it on to everyone else in the Russell City community. I'll pass it over to Regina for any final words, but thank you, everybody. Look forward to seeing all of the next one.
Yep, Priscilla couldn't said it better myself. I think this was a very productive meeting, and if we are able to, you know, kind of move along at this pace and make decisions, I have high hopes for what your team will be able to achieve.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Great
Thank
evening.
you. Bye-bye.
Good night. Have a blessed weekend.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye, Tony.
Good night. Enjoy.
Bye.
Bye.
Stay safe.
Good night, everybody. God bless you.
Good night, Edward.
Hi, Turkey.
Good night, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting now. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.